food baskets to the urban areas. Don't forget, you see this analogy of 100 naira rice is in Lagos. There are places in this country where you can't even finish 50 naira rice, even today.
Okay.
Right? And that is,
that's another side of the coin.
Yeah, so, and that is because they really are still a bit detached from some of these challenges that we're facing, right? So let's look at those gaps.
What you're saying is that the cost of living hasn't necessarily gone up equally.
No, it's biting hard across, right? It's biting across, but in some places it's biting a lot harder than the others. The urban areas are facing the brunt. Lagos is at the center of a lot of these things. But if we focus on logistics, road network, I said to you, we have 200,000 kilometers of roads. How many are actually good and motorable? Now, if we fix that, it's easier for me to transport, right, and bring food in. And then I don't have any justification to throw the cost astronomically high, right? Before we even go into the indices of production, right, and the challenges indigenous manufacturers face, if the CBN increases the MPR rates, I can tell you for a fact that they will be stifling production. Because why should I borrow more? Why should I pay more for money to produce? When, don't forget that indigenous producers have importers to compete with. Because the price imbalance is also a challenge.
Indeed. Let me come back to you now, because looking at our own rate of 26.72%, and I had said totally wildly that there are places in this world where they have 400%, but there are also places in this world where they have 2% and are complaining. They're complaining that this 2% is too much. Now, I was listening or reading of the, I think, yes, it was the Minister of the Economy, Minister of Finance, who was saying that there already are things in the works that will, as a result of President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, would make a difference. But again, as always, these things have a gestation period. I was going to ask you, coming down from there, coming down from 26.72, give me your prognosis on how doable this is going to be in the, I won't say medium term, because you broke it down into immediate, medium, and long term. How doable is it? People want to see that figure come down.
Well, the truth is, in the next 1 or 2 quarters, we may not see real improvement in inflation rates.
Just not giving ourselves false hope.
Probably go peak at around 29% or thereabouts before we begin to see a reduction in inflation rates. That will take about 2 quarters. I said that because I look at all the indicators. Number one, the system is awash with cash. Fortunately, the cash is not dovetailing into the pockets of the middle and the working class. That's a problem.
Yeah, and it's important you say that, because when it was first of all said, when you said there's too much money in the system, awash with cash, and people will be saying, what are these people talking about on television?
Oh, yes.
You know, what are they talking about?
Yeah, but
that is the ordinary person. They said there's too much cash. I've not seen any of it. Maybe you can explain that, because you said it's not dovetailing into the pockets of the ordinary folk. Where exactly is this cash?
If you look at banking reports, for instance, CBN is presently telling the banks to lend more, fund the economy more, and interestingly, the banks have a lot of money within their system that they should push out. But they, of course, they look at the risk within the system. When you push this money out, then we create bad assets. It becomes a risk management crisis again. So they are very careful not to do that and not to be aggressive about lending and other likes. But when you look at the reality that we have so much cash within the system, it's likely to get worse. Number one, in the last quarter of the year, the last quarter, there is a high intensity for government parastatals to do the budget, make sure that they do the budget runs its focus before another one comes out. Then the first quarter of next year again, we are going to have expansionary fiscal policy. The budget is likely to go from 20 trillion to 26 trillion. That's about 30% increase in budget. There'll be heavy spending next year. Then another thing is that technically the federal government has agreed to increase minimum wage. And from the look of things, it's likely to be around 50,000, 60,000 or more. So when you have so much money now, you pay a civil servant more money, but you don't have the goods to buy. We're all struggling to buy the few goods available. you see that the major task is to make sure that we ease the supply gaps. And the CBN has done something tactical. People don't want to agree with the CBN.
Okay.
They're saying for essential foods and building materials, which is where we have problems really, let's allow people to move these things out. I'll now expect the CBN to expand our policy to put in regulations and guidelines that will make sure that we have less of outflow of foreign exchange. And it's regulated in such a way that they go for big ticket transactions to bridge the gap between demand and supply. And they focus on people who have capacity to source for their foreign exchange from outside Nigeria so that they can also boost liquidity in the FX market. So technically, in another 3, 4, 5 months, prices will come down. Prices of rice, for instance, in Niger Republic is still less than 30,000 naira equivalent for a 50 kg rice. By the time government is able to transfer that advantage into the economy, which is what they're trying to do indirectly, we assume prices of rice and other commodities will come down. The same thing for building materials. We have the cement industry. We don't import the bagged cement. And that's good for manufacturing. But the benefit is terminating at the level of production, not getting to consumers.
Exactly.
So what government is saying is this: let people breathe, let consumers breathe.
Exactly.
Let's have more opportunities, let's have more commodities within the economy, so that when that minimum wage comes,
okay,
we will pay more for those items. We have varieties, we have options, there's competitiveness within the economy. It's not that they want to deliberately expose producers to competition. That's one. Then if you look at some of the items they've removed from the restriction list now, they are also raw materials to manufacturers. For instance, palm oil for soap making and all of them. Then you talk about grains. The poultry industry is frustrated. People are even selling their fowls ahead of Christmas because they can no longer afford.
They can't breathe anymore, so to speak.
We don't have the grains to manufacture them. But if you're able to create a window by which you bring these things in, the cost, the main beneficiary of those things, of this policy, will be manufacturers. For instance, if you bring in the grains, you have livestock feed coming down far cheaper than it is now. That will transfer to consumers maybe in December, post-December. The same thing goes for manufacturing palm oil and some of them. Of course, in certain aspects, you hurt production. But overall, producers will benefit, consumers will benefit. So the impact of this will be felt in the second quarter. So in another 2 quarters or thereabouts. So by and large, government has made a lot of initiatives and policies.
Okay.
Those policies will begin to give dividend maybe in another 12 months. But to start with, you have to battle. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Before it gets better. Now, I see that you agreed with that, Mari. And so this really is the message to those who are trying to, help themselves. Heaven helps those who help themselves. And there are a lot of people who are saying that, you just spoke about opportunities, so solving those opportunities. And people are coming out of universities now, being actually trained out of a salary mindset. Say, look, it might be risky. Go out there and become, an entrepreneur. People have to be patient.
Well, yeah, so nothing is, you don't give birth to a baby today and expect the baby to start walking the next day.
Okay, let me just stop there so that when I come back from this break, you won't be interrupted. Let's just stay on that model that, you got to be patient, but you're not going to have a baby tomorrow if you just started thinking about it right now. We'll be right back.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known. For when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Okay, welcome back. Our guest this morning, Kayode Oyedeji, economist, and Amarui Edogiawere, startup business lawyer and financial analyst. We were just talking about the kind of patience we were going to have. But also let me throw in there that the kind of things that both of you are quite upbeat about, in spite of the hard times. You're quite upbeat. You know, I like the idea that, look, entrepreneurs, they thrive where there are solutions to be proffered for existing problems. So what if 8 years ago, we were where we are now, 8 years ago?
We won't be here.
Chai.
It's that simple. See, the thing about, so let me say this. See, the thing about leadership is that you cannot afford not to know. And in leadership, you cannot afford to experiment too much. Right?
You've got to be coming from a position of knowledge.
You've got to come from, not just from a position of knowledge, but you've got to have it reasonably figured out. So what we saw in the last 8 years is a lot of experiment, and then halfway, oh, it's not working, let's go back, let's start again. And then you're messing with people's businesses, life mainstay, and here we are. Inflation is off the hook. Remember, the key indices for inflation is when you have simple things and you have big currencies, right? 50 naira is literally non-existent. I'm not going to the 20s and the 10s and the 5s, right? And so you really have from 200 naira up. And that's dangerous. Yes. Whereas low currencies started going extinct little by little. And nothing was done to ensure that these things are curbed. You really can't buy anything with 10 naira.
God forbid we should reach the level of hyperinflation.
No, but if we do not intentionally address those issues, we will get there. Remember, we have a cost push inflation problem, right? And so that in itself is a challenge that we've got to fix. Now, government also has a role to play in price standardization. But you see, where there is a mistrust, it's difficult for you to actually now get the buying, private sector buying, especially that of the informal sector.
So price standardization that you just spoke about, not to be confused with price control.
No, price standardization. So what you have is price control is saying you're putting a peg. You know, that may be a bit, it may appear draconian, right? But you will be surprised that the informal sector are very, very, very structured. So if a cup of rice goes up today in my 12 market, in a Butameta, it's the same. You'll be shocked that in another area, it's the same. And you'll be wondering what's going on. They have a means of disseminating this information because they have structured unions that regulate their activities. Now, sit down with them and walk around these challenges that they face. And then see, look, the palliatives that are going over $1 trillion in palliative. Now, what really is the approach? What really is government's approach? I have never been one to say, look, dash people money or give people money to subsidize. No, focus on the root cause. I do not like band-aid effects. And I have said that, you know, Mr. Cardozo and his team have a lot of financial engineering, fiscal engineering to do. Because this will no longer be a white and black approach or a theoretical approach. You really have to come down and see how, you know, especially in the short term, you're allowing people breathe. Because really, the hands are on people's necks.
Well, now, allowing people breathe, Cardozo was saying, among other things, that, look, unlike in the past when compromises were made, I think in his own close circle, he's known as the headmaster because he insists on
following due process.
Follow due process every line of the way. How significant do you think that's going to be when we, as it were, I got the impression that he was saying, we're going to stick to the rules here.
No, so the rules, so what are rules? Rules are procedures that you make that regulate conduct, right? But rules are also a product of the environment, right? So I can't bring the rules that apply in, for instance, if I were going to be addressing judges, right, or addressing or being in a legal gathering, I'll probably wear a tie. If I were going to be in a courtroom, I'll probably be robed and wear my bib. Now, I can't bring that rule to TVC's studio. So you've got to understand the environment, right? And the rules you make and this is the bespokeness we're talking about. Understanding the environment where you are trying to structure this. Like for instance, if you say you are going to empower importers because you want to bridge the food deficit, you also know that you are going to be stifling manufacturers, right? Okay. And so what approach do you take to ensure that both the manufacturers and the importers, because really they are providing a solution. We're talking about poultry. The poultry industry, $4.6 billion worth, is suffering its biggest crisis in the most recent times. Because one, they can't feed their birds. Two, they are not even producing enough.
That's another problem.
Right? So you have...
For a moment, I beg your pardon for interrupting you. Let me bring in Mukhtar, who has called in from Kano. Good morning, Mukhtar. Well, I don't think he's there anymore, Mukhtar, just checking, are you still there? Mukhtar calling in from Kano.
Hello, good morning, Uncle Yori. How are you doing?
Prices are as low as we think.
Hello.
How are you doing, Miss Uncle Yori?
Good morning to you, sir. I can see that we are connected, but I can't hear you at all in studio. It's so low. We'll sort that out. But please continue, sir.
I can hear you well.
You can hear me well. That's good. We can't hear you, but we'll see how that's going to work. Please continue, sir.
Let me make some contributions. Yes, you see, the problem in Nigeria, we have a very hostile and hard environmental influences that are disconnected between infrastructural facilities and the other components to make business easy and simple for people to benefit. See, there is no power, no security. The prices continue to soar because of fiscal policy are faulty. There is disconnect between ministries and agencies. Most of the policies are not being targeted for the poor because the best policy is that which targeted the masses, because they are making policies that sweet the politicians. Most of the policies that comes up from the environment is the most important, because there is a problem of insecurity, there is a problem of kidnapping, there is a problem of raw materials, there is a problem of money circulation, and most of the appointees are not capable of holding their office. So the leaders appoint those who contributed to their success. They are supposed to appoint capable and responsible people, irrespective of their political affiliations. If you know somebody is capable, he can handle, let him come and serve. But don't just consider your own people that helped you during the campaign. It's very wrong. And the inflation that you have seen today is lack of the government intervention. And the government is not doing anything to help the masses, because the poor man wants to eat. The poor man wants to have a good medication. A poor man wants to send his children to schools. Even if you go to Europe, especially UK, you will find there is subsidy in the health sector. There is subsidy in the school. There is subsidy in every business. Most of the foods in the UK are very low. The price is very low. You cannot have a very expensive food. Everybody must eat well, so he doesn't even go to the hospital.
Okay,
so
Mukhtar, just before you finish, Mukhtar, beg your pardon. It seems to me that you spoke about subsidy. You said something about subsidy twice.
Thank you very much.
Mukhtar, could you hear? Can you hear? You spoke about subsidy twice in there. I wonder if you have issues with the removal of subsidy. I think Mukhtar is gone. But he also spoke about competence. He said a number of things. Competence of those who are helping to drive this. And then he brought up the matter of subsidy in different places of the world. So I wanted to say, look, is it about subsidy, which we know the subsidy has been removed and it's not coming back? But then he now spoke about the competence of those who are helping drive this. Would you like to speak to that? And I'll come to you as well.
Well, number one, the issue of subsidy is a very hard, very bitter pill for everybody to swallow. That money is coming from our pockets.
It is.
It's coming from our disposable income. Some people will probably have additional cost of 100,000 a month just because subsidy was removed.
Yes.
But we've all come to the sad conclusion that subsidy must go because the level of inefficiency it created within the economy is massive. And because we wanted the economy to begin to operate with a decent, reasonable level of efficiency, we were all in agreement with government that it should go.
Every next single presidential aspirant
agreed that it
agreed
was
that that was what he was going to do.
The challenge is
won.
how post-subsidy removal will be managed.
That is the issue.
The president, for instance, in fairness to him, has demonstrated commitment to making sure that the impact is not that heavy on the people. What about the governors? What about the local governments? Are they ready to go along the same way? Are they keen into it, or they are just seeing more money coming in and they're enjoying themselves? I've told people a couple of times, the money saved from subsidy, the federal government is only going to take about half of it. The other half will go into local government and states. There is no commitment, no agreement with the people that they will use this money in a particular way that will benefit the people. There is a particular local government where ordinary local government chairman appointed about 38 to do what? Sharing difficult money we are all sweating to give to government. So how this money is utilized is important. That's one.
So, one moment, please. I beg your pardon, because George has also called in from Ikeja. I know you haven't exhausted the question that Mukhtar raised, and I'll come over to Amaru for that. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Uncle Yori, in the past, the definition of inflation was when too much money is chasing too few goods. But during the time MFLA held the country to ransom for about 3 months during the elections, the inflation rate in this country did not drop. I noticed that. The point I'm driving at is that while inflation is being discussed, we should also discuss the issue of love among ourselves as a people. If you go to the market in the morning, you buy something for 200 naira. When you go in the evening to the same shop and the same person selling, he will say it is now 300 naira. You ask, why is it so? He said the rate of dollar has gone up. So what concerns dollar with tomato and carrot that we get here and plantain? The point I'm trying to make is that many of us just jack up these prices for lack of love within us. These are the things the clerics are supposed to be teaching
randomly
in religious houses. But they don't do that. They're always preaching how to get tithes and get money from people here and there.
Okay.
So the human element of human conduct is also important, and we need to also stress that. It's the CBN people and the NBS officials who go to the market to take statistics. What they do is, at that particular point in time that they are visiting, they just collect the price. They do not, interrogate the people to find out the cost and how the prices come about. All they do is just to collect and then tell us this is the rate of inflation within so period. But we need to address the cause of the problem if we really want to solve it. So
thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. I beg your pardon. Thank you very much for calling in. Well, again, let me come to you, Mari, because maybe continuing part of what Kade started on addressing Mukhtar's observations from Kano, but also now factoring in what he has just said, that, look, that last caller just said that as far as he's concerned, perhaps people are even doing part of this arbitrarily because there's a Nigerian attitude where, I don't...
Lack of consequences. I've always said, look, we don't have problem with laws. Nigeria has one of the finest set of crop of laws. Enforcement, consequences for action is a big challenge. And that has always been our bane.
So he might actually be right.
Where you have...
Where people just arbitrarily...
Yes, so if you look at the body language every time there's a new administration, the first 1 month, appears like people get to do the right thing because they are not sure what the body language of whoever is the new chief executive would be. And then when they study and understand the body language, they either dip or they improve. And so because the head determines how the body functions. And so I think that one thing that government has got to do in improving our system, it's absurd today that you see workers of an agency or establishment of government, shutting their doors or shutting their gates because a new chief executive has been appointed, right? And that level of indiscipline, you see people lock their ministers in and all that. Now, that does not say high-handedness in any way is right, but the fact is that we've got to get people responsible for their actions. We've got to make people answer the questions that they ought to answer. Okay, and so we've got to ensure that the enforcement of our laws are taken seriously. But let's talk about Mukhtar. Mukhtar pointed out, the challenge of the poor and the lower class. And I think that
sufficient things aren't done for the poor.
The biggest challenge we have is the weaponization of poverty by politicians. And so if you really look, and I want you to check, the problem with us is that we really have a data management deficit. If you check, insecurity is always at its peak in between election cycles. Once an election cycle commences, insecurity dips.
Okay.
Ask INEC if they did not vote even in the hot spots in the north. Now what happens? Where you weaponize poverty, you utilize the lower class to do your bidding, and then you give them 2 fish and a loaf of bread. When it's finished, what they do in between the next cycle is to create a situation where they survive until the next time. How do you solve that problem? Empower them. Education, entrepreneurial, vocational support, adequate political will, and sanitizing our electoral process. Very key. Because when you don't weaponize poverty, listen, I don't know how much you want to give me to come to a ballot, to come to an election place and cause trouble. Me, with my level of education and exposure, and that's me, no.
But that's
go down the lower end of the stick. If you empower them, a man who has a small shop going for him and is able to marry a wife, feed his children, do a few things, thanks is God. You see, Nigerians are not greedy people.
Okay.
What the challenge we have, Yori, is that we have a big problem with our social safety net. And what constitutes a social safety net? Education, healthcare, accommodation.
I hear you. Let me bring in Sunny in the UK. Good morning, and thank you for holding on, Sunny. Sunny in the UK.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead now. You're on air now, even though we can barely hear you, but please go ahead.
Okay. I think, thank you for this opportunity first and foremost. But the point I would like to make here is this. There is a form of disconnection between the class of the politicians we have and what ordinary Nigerians go through daily. And how do I mean, and how can we resolve some of these issues? Now, we've itemized the panelists, they've done well to itemize some of the main problems we have with getting food, for instance, getting food to the market, food being destroyed or being damaged or rotting. Now, in my experience going around Nigeria, I realized that there is hardly any local part of Nigeria that people don't travel to, even when we have all these bad roads. Now, any government of today should start looking at a micro way. It doesn't have to be in a macro level. Micro way of these farmers getting their food, getting their produce to the people, the consumer straight on. And we can throw, I'm going to come here and say throw technology to it. Let's pick some example. Imagine our NIPOS is working very well. I know a town in, or we say a village in Enugu called Ehamofu. NIPOS office is there, but it's been locked for a very long time. Now, and it's a farmer community. Imagine a farmer in that place able to make he harvests his banana. And he can actually advertise it on a particular platform online. Someone in Kano actually ordered it. I tell you, that food can get to them. These are the areas that government needs to look at so that people start having immediate benefit of government. It shouldn't be too hard. In a year, all these type of things can be done. And there are more examples like the panelists have actually given. We should start having leaders, as in those people who are put with the responsibility of managing these agencies of government. So start connecting directly with people. Start feeling the things that, look, this is how people feel, and see how they can resolve the problem
thank you very much,
that we have at this point.
I really hate to interrupt you, Sonny, but thank you very much for calling in. Time is, as usual, the oppressor in this case here. So you addressed some of those things, both of you. There's so much more in there, but at least you related. And there's a sense in which we thank Mukhtar for calling in and highlighting the areas that he highlighted. But he also seemed to indicate that contrary to the idea out there that, and you just said that, look, if we were here 8 years ago and the kind of actions that are being taken now had been taken 8 years ago, we wouldn't be here now. But it was Mukhtar's opinion that we might not have the best in terms of manpower.
Manpower recruitment, leadership recruitment, generally in Nigeria. But I think he said something about it. Let me start from what would have happened if you had done this in the last 8 years. Government did make efforts. The only thing is that they decided to focus on the soft part of the solution. Okay. The difficult part of the solution was ignored. The Anchor program, for instance, didn't really dig deep enough. They eventually started throwing money at problems. If you see what Awolowo did during his time, just take a visit to the farm settlements. You see the houses, the provision for infrastructure, the schools, the health center, the market, the cluster they created, the mechanized agriculture, mechanized system they infused into the system. We have to go back to that. The bottom line is that in the short run, we'll be able to wriggle out of this problem if we go by ensuring that we close the supply gap. That's why somebody said even during Emefiele, people still increased. People were able to do that because the supply gap was there. The market does not respond so much to sentiment, responds to reality, because market forces will determine what you have from time to time to fix your price for you. Nobody can keep an item and say buy at 10 naira when somebody is saying I go for 9 naira, 8 naira. Yes. Once there is that competitiveness, market forces will determine the price. Market, so that's one. And ultimately now we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to develop agriculture. We have to develop manufacturing. We have to put the infrastructure in place. We are playing too much at the level of governance, especially as states and local government. They are behaving as if they don't have responsibility. Okay. They have to jettison that sense of recklessness and begin to focus on what will save and rescue Nigeria from hunger, from starvation, and from underdevelopment.
We've completely run out of time, but when that guy said that even during the Emefiele era, that something, I remember that we were seeing unbelievable stacks of money that were brought out, and I was saying, you see now, that one was not within the banking system, but I'm afraid we can't even talk about it. So let me just cancel that. I just remembered that the thought, that there's too much money in the system. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. You've helped us try and understand it, but also you sort of prepared us for the way you put it was that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yes, but one last thing that we must
very briefly, please.
We must commodify a particular thing. If government does not do that, we won't attract FX.
Okay.
We need to commodify one staple item. Cassava, for instance. Do you know that in the Western world, they rely heavily on ethanol? And ethanol is a byproduct of cassava.
Indeed.
Invest in the cassava market. Enable them, commodify that product, push it for export, attract FX.
We're going to leave it.
So Basanjo tried to do that.
Indeed. In fact, let me not just start up again, because they even said there were parts of it, even flour, cassava flour, and all of that. But thank you very much, Omarui Edogiawere, startup business lawyer and financial analyst. And thank you as well, Kayode Oyedeji, economist, for throwing light on this whole matter. So that's our program out there today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.
I'm here to rule forever, and nothing can stop me.
That woman is wicked.
I love you all.